Corporate Governance Platform, a program from the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, is now at your doorstep.
By the way, what is corporate governance and what are its key pillars?
Will there be any conflict of interest if a person combines the roles of a chairman and a chief executive officer in a corporate organization?
What can Nigeria do to gain international recognition in the context of the application of corporate governance?
These and many more questions will be answered on
Corporate Governance Platform, a program designed to inform and educate our numerous viewers on the adoption of corporate governance best practices by corporate entities.
Join the Corporate Governance Platform crew every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. on MITV, your talent station via DSTV 255 and UHF 43.
Corporate Governance Platform, your strategy for the adoption of corporate governance best practices by corporate entities. Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals.
It's a beautiful Thursday evening in the city of Lagos. Thanks for joining us on Corporate Governance Platform. I am Tunde Odeyemi, and in today's episode, we want to take a look at propagation of the tenets of corporate governance, and of course, we'll be looking at the personal experience of our guest. Our guest today is a distinguished governing member of ICSAN and a fellow of the Institute, Mrs. SOPHIA ABIRI-FRANKLIN. Mrs. SOPHIA ABIRI-FRANKLIN is the managing partner at Georgetown Solicitors, a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators, UK and Nigeria, and an associate of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, United Kingdom. She has her LLB with honors from Delta State University, Abraka, and her LLM from the University of Lagos. Presently, she is pursuing a PhD with interest in corporate governance and sustainability of business, of companies at the Babcock University. She has varied experience in active practice and has worked with the law firm of Otaru and Company. Sophia's specialties include corporate governance, commercial law, which of course includes labor, employment, investment law and administrative law, arbitration, taxation, and energy law. Sophia is also involved in several volunteer and charitable activities such as Association of Women in Governance and Give Hope to Kidney Foundation and NGO. Mrs. Sophia ABIRI-FRANKLIN, you are welcome to Corporate Governance Platform.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, and thank you for finding time to join us on today's program. Yeah, before we start the program, I would like to ask our viewers to partake or participate in today's program by sending SMS to either make comments or ask questions on today's program. You can SMS 080-2323-1287. I take that again, 2323-1287, 080-2323-1287. Mrs. ABIRI-FRANKLIN, once again, you are welcome to Corporate Governance Platform.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we want to look at propagation of the tenets of corporate governance. I will also look at your personal experience as far as corporate governance is concerned. I will kickstart this conversation by asking, what does corporate governance connote?
Well, thank you very much. Corporate governance, as the word connotes, corporate, you can see it stands for entities, companies, organization, and governance. What comes to mind is control, direction, rule, principles for guiding and directing the affairs of the company. And so corporate governance are the guiding principles instituted and put in place for the owners of the business to ensure that their investments are properly administered. And so these tenets see them appointing the directors and auditors to oversee the business, and these directors are also placed with the responsibility of setting the strategic objectives and direction of the business, and also appoint and employ staff and management to ensure that the business is profitable. And at the end, these directors also have the responsibility to account to the shareholders of the company as to the profitability and everything they have done with respect to the management of the company. So these are the basic definition of the term corporate governance, how the control and direction of any business, basically the guiding principles to ensure that the business is sustainable.
Wonderful, wonderful. This is robust. That is very nice. Now, would you tell us, give us some information about corporate governance? How does it evolve?
Okay, the evolution of corporate governance, I like telling stories. Like I would say, I would like to use the analogy of the principle of the Bible from the medieval times. First of all, let's go to the creation story. When God created the earth, from the story of the Bible, he created the earth, the garden, and then he placed man, and he gave him the responsibility to say what? That he should be in charge of everything. And after giving him the responsibility of being in charge, to take dominion, to control, you remember he gave him certain guidelines. He said, you can eat of everything, but do not, there's a particular fruit you must not eat. I've given you everything. So that's just to give you an idea. So if you even look at the creation story, that's to tell you that for every entity, there must be a rule, a guiding principle placed. If not, there will be chaos. So you go to the medieval time, when people started doing businesses, when the trade started evolving, trade by barter, at the time, trade began to evolve. People began to have businesses whereby they need people to supervise their business when they are not there, and so they have to be accountability. You know, they definitely come back to say, okay, what is the profit? What did you do in my absence? Even we have several stories like that in the Bible that say, I gave you 2 talents. When I came back, what is remaining? So that's to tell you that right from creation story, the tenets of corporate governance is embedded. And so for the medieval times, when from the past times when businesses were set up, boards, directors were put in place. But after a while, globally people began to realize that these directors started living excessive life, doing so many things, taking the fortunes of the company, spending it on themselves. And this kind of attitudes led to several corporate collapse all over the world. Wonderful. And this sought to the collapse, for instance, of Anderson, the WorldCom story, and all the other financial collapse and the corporate collapse in the US. And so coming back home, of course, before then the Cadbury report for corporate governance had been released. Coming back home, in the early 2000s, we had the issue of the Cadbury saga in Nigeria. And so when this WorldCom, these corporate collapses came up, it brought the tenets of corporate governance to fore, and everybody started getting interested in the issue. For corporate governance, the major law that is guiding anything business is the CAMA. And so when CAMA was promulgated, and then with the corporate failures, the industry regulators began to put heads together to say, you know what, we need to come up with a particular code that speaks to how our businesses will be run. And so different sectors came up with different codes. The telecom sector came up with the code of corporate governance for the telecom sector. The bank and other financial institutions came up with their code. Insurance sector came up with their code. And this Investment and Security Act came up with their code. And so these codes were being implemented, but there was still some gap. And so in 2016, the Financial Reporting Council released the code. And after that code was released, there were still some issues surrounding it in terms of the implementation. And so the most recent code is now the 2018 code that has been released by the Financial Reporting Council, which is actually, the aim is to put clearly all the guidelines, principles to be followed for entities to be sustainable. So that's where we are as of today. And today, hopefully, we are going to discuss some few tenets and interesting aspects of that code.
Wonderful. You've actually taken us from the medieval period to the present age. And you've said that corporate governance is all about guiding principles.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how would you explain disclosure and transparency as corporate governance concepts?
Yeah, disclosure and transparency, they are one of the key tenets of corporate governance. Like I've said, from the creation story and as to how every organization is set up, you put officers in place, they are appointed to take care of the administration of the company. But then there's something called disclosure. The investors and the shareholders, they want to see the directors and the officers put in place to be able to be transparent, to disclose everything. Even the regulators that is regulating that particular business wants to see that certain aspects of the business is actually disclosed. Principle 28 of the Code of Corporate Governance talks about disclosure, and this disclosure states certain principles and tenets that must be disclosed annually concerning the company, to say what has been followed, has been applied. One of the things that you have to state is the governance principle, the provisions that have been applied, how you went about it, the financial state of the company. In terms of ESG, environmental, social, and governance, the community, health and safety, everything that was done in that company in the course of the year, how you are faring with your staff, the activities you want to be able to disclose. And then the transparency in that disclosure is the fact that there's the word called trust. It's also one of the tenets. The directors of the company have to be transparent, and the shareholders have to trust to ensure that whatever they say, whatever the management tells the staff and the management, the employees, they have to be able to trust the employer. So these key tenets in terms of the transparency and disclosure, they are basic tenets in the corporate governance that will ensure that the business is sustainable.
Splendid. If we talk about disclosure, who is the company disclosing to? Who are they disclosing to?
Now, when you talk about disclosure, there are a lot of issues, there are a lot of aspects to disclosure. Now, disclosure can be defined in the aspect of disclosure to regulators.
Okay.
For instance, one of the things that everybody will quickly relate with is filing of annual returns. So you have to disclose your returns, your capital base. Oh, this is what we made, this is the profit, this is the law. Okay. And so that's where transparency comes in. There's another aspect of disclosure, for instance, on the board. You understand, the Code of Corporate Governance has made several provisions. For instance, there's the principle of conflict of interest. The directors have the duty to disclose where they are being involved, or they have certain interest in transactions that will make their interest be conflicted in any transaction. They are now in that situation. They are supposed to disclose. So disclosures can be two ways. Can be to the regulators, can be to the board within the shareholders and the management of the company. So disclosure is very apparent.
Okay, can you name some other principles or tenets of corporate governance apart from disclosure and transparency that you're also familiar with?
Wow, there are a lot of principles of corporate governance that comes to mind. One of the issues is the issue of integrity.
Wonderful.
Trust, openness, fairness, ethical dimension. So when you talk about trust, is a very fundamental aspect of corporate governance. Now, I talked about the creation story. We always go back. When you set up a business where God gave Adam the responsibility to supersede the world, he trusted him, he gave him responsibility. And then if anybody sets up a business and you appoint directors, for instance, there is trust, and you do not want to betray that trust. There's also fairness in the way you treat situations, even between the board, the management, the staff, in implementing the principles within and outside. You have to be fair. There's something called integrity. The principles of corporate governance, remember we talked about disclosure, and you were worried and you wanted to know who exactly are you disclosing to. Now you are disclosing to the authorities, the regulator, and you say your business, your capital base is worth 500 million. And you go and get a contract, for instance, and you do not have the capacity to do that contract because you have lied. And so the issue of integrity is one of the tenets that is very, very germane to the to corporate governance, because it says that when you represent any information, when you say anything, you are transparent. What you say, we should be able to go to sleep with it.
Wonderful.
And then the issue of ethical dimension, because of time, we just stop here. The issue of ethical dimension talks about the values, the morals, the beliefs of the organization. And the ethical dimension of any business now spirals to what we call the ethical culture. And so what we do not believe in. So there are some businesses, for instance, one of the strong ethical culture is the fact that they frown at any issue that looks like corruption. Any issue, for instance, that looks like bribe, giving of kickbacks and those kind of things. It could be a part of the ethical culture of an organization, that this is one of our key values of this company. And so because of that, I know of firms, for instance, especially multinationals, that would turn down a job because the issues surrounding it breach their ethical culture. And so no matter what, if you are going to pay them 500 billion for this job, they will turn it down because there are already some issues surrounding it. You understand what I'm talking about? So the ethical culture, this principle, these tenets I've discussed, they form the bedrock of corporate governance. And so this moral value, this belief system, once it's embedded in the values and the culture of any company or organization or a state or as a people of a nation, it now guides the way things are done in the business, and the decision and the policies. This ethical dimension will guide the decisions concerning certain businesses to be taken.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That is very comprehensive. Thank you very much. We would like to go on a very short break. When we come back, we continue with the discussion on the tenets of corporate governance with Mrs. ABIRI-FRANKLIN. Please don't go away.
Corporate Governance Platform, a program from the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, is now at your doorstep.
By the way, what is corporate governance and what are its key pillars?
Will there be any conflict of interest if a person combines the roles of a chairman and a chief executive officer in a corporate organization?
What can Nigeria do to gain international recognition in the context of the application of corporate governance?
These and many more questions will be answered on
Corporate Governance Platform, a program designed to inform and educate our numerous viewers on the adoption of corporate governance best practices by corporate entities.
Join the Corporate Governance Platform crew every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. on MITV, your talent station, via DSTV 255 and UHF 43.
Corporate Governance Platform, your strategy for the adoption of corporate governance best practices by corporate entities. Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals.
You are welcome back. It's still Corporate Governance Platform, coming to you live from MITV and proudly sponsored by the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria. We are discussing tenets of corporate governance, and I have with me here in the studio Mrs. SOPHIA ABIRI-FRANKLIN. Before we went on break, you talked about some of the tenets or principles of corporate governance. We would like to go into your personal experience. Now, can you share with us some of your personal experience in relation to entrenchment and practice of corporate governance?
Well, thank you very much. With respect to my experience, there's so much. So I'm just looking at, I'm going to share two short experiences I've had that brings the issue and the propagation of the tenets to bear. So there was one of the first companies that I served on the board when I started my practice. I was very surprised as to how the company folded up. And when the company started, it was a lovely company, beautiful board, had qualified professionals, big names, retired governor, even royal traditional rulers. And then something happened. After a few meetings, the board had an issue. The managing director of the company was alleged to have misappropriated funds, and this was very serious, up to the extent that the matter was dragged to the FCIS. And so the board members started dragging themselves, come and say how this money was spent from this multinational, this job we did. And so a lot of allegations came to bear. Even I, as company secretary, had to be invited at some point to the EFC for us to come and say what I knew concerning some of the affairs of the board. And that particular company, I remember that in our first board meeting, a lot of things were discussed. And when the issue came up, I kept on drawing the attention of the board that this issue, and it takes us back to that issue I was talking about, ethical dimension, ethical culture. So the values and the tenets of this particular company were not in the right perspective. And so they could do a lot of things. And I was not surprised when the issue came up and that there was allegation of misappropriation of certain funds from the managing director, as little as it sounds with respect to how the contract sum was misappropriated. That particular thriving, viable company folded up. and if you know the caliber of people on the board. So I will now tell you the lesson I learned from there. So that's scenario A thriving company that was doing so well with nice set of people, professionals on the board with experience, suddenly folded up. Scenario 2 is an indigenous business.
Okay.
An indigenous business, family-owned business that 2 brothers, family members started up many years ago. And this business grew in leaps and in bounds. And suddenly, after many years, age caught up with one of the shareholders. And he wanted the child to take over. At that time, probably he was there, and the other brother did not want the child to take over. And as little as that led to a whole lot of row and crippled the affairs and the activities of the company. And that particular issue saw them being dragged, going in and out of court, of course, reputational issues. And when you start having those kind of issues within the board, shareholders are fighting, it leads to a whole lot of bad publicity for the business. And so that's one of the few experiences I've had.
Okay, I'm going to ask you some of the lessons you learned from these experiences. But before then, I'd like to also say that viewers can join us by sending an SMS to 080-2323-1287. I take that again, 080-2323-1287. And of course, somebody has sent something here, said, let me read this question. I will appreciate the views of the guest on the role of practitioners in propagating the tenets of corporate governance. What this person is asking of is the views, the role of the practitioners, people that are practicing corporate governance in propagating the tenets of corporate governance. Quickly answer that question, then I'll come back to your experience.
Okay, the role of practitioners in propagating the tenets of corporate governance. First of all, as practitioners, the practitioner has to be aware. You understand? Because for you to be able to preach something, for you to be able to convince your client, you have to understand it. You have to understand in the cost, the analysis, everything, the implication of why this company, this entity, this organization, this government have to imbibe the tenet. And once you understand it, you can begin to propagate. You're on board, depending on the practitioner, if you are in corporate practice or you are within an organization as an in-house counsel or company secretary or administrator or compliance officer, you begin to write memos. You begin to, any little direction or decision the company is going to take, you begin to write an opinion like a memo, depending, to say these are the issues. This principle is, this particular step we are going to take is against the principles, the code of corporate governance. If we do this thing, it will make our business sustainable. If we go this way, it will not augur well for the future of this company. So practitioners have to be active. Of course, they would oppose you. Nobody, I will tell you for free, one of the things you will see if you are trying to propagate the tenets is that you will not necessarily be embraced by owners of businesses. Why? Because of the cost analysis. They will always see that the things you are saying will make them spend more money. But you ought, as a practitioner, you need to understand the reason why you ought to make them see need, that the reason why they need to embrace the tenets is for this business to be sustainable. So you need to know that you can't say you will not send your son to school because of school fees. If you want that son to become somebody in future tomorrow, you must be prepared to do everything that is possible to ensure that you give that child quality education. So that's what I would liken it to. So for the practitioner out there that wants to ensure to propagate these tenets to clients, you must be ready to even retrain yourself to understand how to go about it, and then you can take it.
Okay, practitioners need to be alive to their responsibilities.
Yes.
Now you shared with us 2 scenarios. One multinational, right, and the other one indigenous company.
Yes.
What lessons did you draw from this experience?
Several lessons.
Can share with our
Several
viewers.
lessons. Now, one of the key lessons I drew from my earlier experiences in this is the fact of as to how the ownership structure of any company has to be decided from the beginning. Key basic governance document. You set up, what we see is 2 friends, 2 brothers, people just come together, set up a business, no purpose, no goal, no value, no plan. You understand? So once the ownership of the business is not properly structured from the start, now it has a whole lot of ripple effect in the future. Apart from that, when you leave the issue of the ownership structure, the next issue you now have to look into is the governance document to ensure that there are policies, there are principles, there are guidelines in place as to how this baby, which is the company can be likened as a baby. When a baby is born, you begin to make plans. You start with your birth certificate. So let's imagine that you register the company, that's your birth certificate. You begin to make plans. You don't just leave that child to start growing, no plan, no future. You don't make any kind of provision, no insurance as to help plan or whatever. That is how a company is like it. So one of the experiences I saw from these failures in experience in this company is that for every company, you have to put your structure in place. Another key thing is that you have to make plans for succession. Succession planning is very, very key. No matter the kind of business, you have to say, oh, I'm running this business today. What's going to happen in 40 years' time when I'm no longer able to? Is it 40 years' time, 5 minutes to retirement? That's when you start looking forward to who is going to succeed you. You call your son, he may be a medical outfit, an hospital, and he said, Dad, I know I studied medicine in Harvard or wherever, but for your information, my passion is in the media. I want to be an MC. And the man is suddenly heartbroken, and then 5 minutes to retirement, he's shopping around. Totally wrong. From the start of the business, your ownership structure is in place, succession plans, policies, programs as to how the various ways the business will be run, decisions, how things people will be appointed to board. Once these things are put in place, and I must not fail to mention this issue of ethical dimension. So it's at that point you agree the principles clearly. What are we going to do? How do we run this business? What steps are we take? So are we going to agree to take? So once you have put those policies, those codes in place, you can be sure that your businesses will be on to be sustainable.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Sophia ABIRI-FRANKLIN. Thank you very much. You have exhausted our time. We could not even go further again.
Wow.
This is where we will wrap it up. And we want to thank you very much for coming on the show and for sharing your thoughts, especially your experience as far as corporate governance is concerned. We'd like to remind our viewers that ICSAN Annual Public Lecture 2021 is going to come up on July 16, and the theme is Sustainability Beyond Rhetorics as a Corporate Survival Strategy. And the speaker is Mrs. Shade Morgan, Director of Nigerian Bureaus. If you have any inquiries, you have the number on the screen. Please call Michael on 080-2311-7969. This is where we wrap up on today's edition of Corporate Governance Platform. Thank you very much for watching. We'd like to invite you again to watch next week, same station, same time. I remain your anchorman, Tunde Odeyemi. Bye for now. Thank you.
Corporate Governance Platform, a program from the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, is now at your doorstep.
By the way, what is corporate governance and what are its key pillars?
Will there be any conflict of interest if a person combines the roles of a chairman and a chief executive officer in a corporate organization?
What can Nigeria do to get international recognition in the context of the application of corporate governance?
These and many more questions will be answered on
Corporate Governance Platform, a program designed to inform and educate our numerous viewers on the adoption of corporate governance best practices by corporate entities.
Join the Corporate Governance Platform crew every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. on MITV, your talent station via DSTV 255 and UHF 43.
Corporate Governance Platform, your strategy for the adoption of corporate governance best practices by corporate entities. Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of